Are you looking for a video tutorial that is going to teach you how to build and deploy a modern, responsive personal portfolio website using HTML, CSS, and JavaScript? Then this is the perfect tutorial for you. In this video, I'm going to teach you step by step on how to build this beautiful, responsive personal portfolio website using only HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. As you can see, this is a very beautiful personal portfolio website that you can build for your business. Okay, so this project is going to be very responsive, and that means it's going to look good on mobile phones, tablets, and desktop devices. It is going to have a light and dark theme functionality. We are going to have a very beautiful accordion for our frequently asked questions section. We are going to have a very functional contact section as well, where people can contact you via WhatsApp, email, and other social media. We are also going to have a fully functioning contact form where people can enter their name, email, a message, and send a message directly through the form on this website that we are going to build today. We are going to have a beautiful carousel for our testimonials. That is the testimonials from our past clients. We are going to have a beautiful carousel to present that. We will have a beautiful and detailed about section to showcase or to tell our potential clients or our visitors more about our education, our skills, about ourselves, and even our experience. We will also have a beautiful and filterable project section where people can click on the different services that we offer to see the projects that pertains to those services. All right, there is a lot that you are going to learn in this video, from CSS, HTML to JavaScript. There is a whole bunch of stuff that you are going to learn in this video. So without wasting any time, let me quickly walk you through the finished project. This is the beautiful portfolio website that we are going to build. As you can see, this is beautiful, this is elegant, this is modern, right? So up top we have our simple navbar with our logo and this button to toggle our theme. We have our image here and some heading, okay? And also we have our call to action buttons, right? So directly your visitors can click to see your projects, which we are going to get to in a minute. And also they can click this to go to your contact section where they can enter a message and then email you directly on your website. How beautiful is that? Right, we have our social media handles here, so they can click here to go to your GitHub, to your website, or you can add any other website that you have, your LinkedIn, whatever you want, you can do it right here. I'm going to show you how to create everything step by step. Down here you can see we have this beautiful floating navigation, which I think makes your website more modern rather than having that old style links up here, right? So let's scroll or let's click here to go to the next section that we have, and this is our about section. Basically, this is where you are going to list your experiences, education, skills, and all that, right? So here we have our experience, and as you can see, the different experiences you have in your career, you can go ahead and then make them or present them here. We have our education, so you can click to see the education, or your visitors will click to see or read more about your education background, your skills, the different skills that you offer or that you have, and also about you. Okay, so everything about you also, you can present them here. Now scrolling down, we have the projects section or our portfolio section right here, and here people can see all the recent projects or all the projects that you have been working on or that you have worked on in the past. Okay, so right here they can also click these buttons to toggle or to filter the different projects depending on the services that you offer. So for the full stack, we can click, or your visitors will click to see the full stack projects that you have. The backend projects right here, we have only one backend project. For front end as well, we have 3, and they can click again here to see all the projects that you've worked on in the past. Beautiful. Also, for each project, you have some details. They can click to see the project, or they can click to see the code or the GitHub for that particular project if it is available. All right, let's scroll down, and this is the testimonials section, right? So here your visitors can read more about your past clients, okay? The testimonials from your past clients, and we are going to use a library called Swiper.js to achieve this carousel effect. Right, let's scroll down more to see the frequently asked questions section, and here we are going to have a beautiful accordion which we are going to code everything by ourselves. Okay, so you are going to learn how to code this beautiful accordion, and here you are going to have the frequently asked questions from your visitors. Okay, so that anybody that has that same question can just come here and then read more about that particular question. And lastly, we have this beautiful contact section. Your visitors have the option to click to message you on any of your socials or any of your contacts. So they can actually click to call you or to message you on WhatsApp, Facebook Messenger, or email, right? But also they have the option to directly message you here. So let's say john@gmail.com, and also a message, right? So they can write a message here, and directly on your website they can message you, and this message is going to come to your email. And look at the beautiful animation for the different sections on the page. This is beautiful, and I'm going to teach you how to do all this in this tutorial. All right, now let's see how this looks on the light theme. And there's the light theme for this website, which is gorgeous. Okay, so these are the different sections that we explored already. Right, there's the projects section of the website. This is the testimonial section. We have the frequently asked questions section as well here. And lastly, we have the contact section. All right, so let's go back up and let's see how this looks on mobile devices. Okay, so this is how our website is going to look on a mobile phone. Beautiful. You can go to the about section right here. Let's scroll down or go to the next section. We have the client section right here. And we have the contact section as well. Beautiful. All right, so this is what we are going to build, and as I said, at the end of this project we are going to deploy this website and make it live, and we have a lot to do, guys, so let's get started. Let's go ahead and set up our hosting and domain name. And having used or having worked with many hosting providers, the one that I always recommend for everyone is Hostinga. Now in the description of this video you are going to find a link that's probably the first link that's going to bring you to this page, and that's an affiliate link that's going to give you the best deal for your hosting purchase. Okay, so go ahead and then click that link. That's going to bring you to this page, and if you visit this page and the design is a little different, that's because it changes from time to time, right? So there's Hostinga. Let's go ahead and then check out some of the hosting web hosting packages that they have. And right here is their premium shared hosting. Okay, so for only $2.80 per month, you are going to have, or you are going to be able to host 100 websites. They give you 100 gigabytes of SSD storage, as you can see here. Free weekly backups. They give you free domain name. How cool is that? For most of the hosting providers, you actually buy the domain name separately. Okay, here they give you a free domain name and a free email as well. So they give you a bunch of other stuff that are very cool and very helpful as well. Right, so this is a perfect deal for me. I'm going to go ahead and then click add to carts, and as I said, make sure you use the link in the description to get the best deal on Hostinga. All right, so this is very affordable. So I'm going to go ahead and then use the 48 months. Okay, and that's going to give me the best deal. And right here, I'm going to go ahead and then enter my email. Right, so that's my email. I'm going to use PayPal. As you can see, my total is $133. Okay, now I have a coupon for you. Okay, and this is the best coupon on Hostinger. Go ahead and enter the coupon code EGATOR. Okay, that's right here. Enter that and apply and see what you get. You get 10% discount. So that is a very cool deal, and this is a very reliable hosting. That is why I went ahead and then got you this very important deal. All right, so we are going to go ahead and submit our secure payment. All right, so after the payment, make sure you check out your email to finish up everything, confirm your email and all that. And right here, I'm going to go ahead and then log in. So right here, I just logged in and I'm going to go ahead. As I said, they give you a free domain name, so you can go ahead and then claim the domain, okay, which is really cool. On most platforms or with most hosting providers, you actually have to buy the domain name separately, which will cost you probably $10 or more, right? So the domain name I'm going to buy is Dummy EGATOR, and I'm going to use the .com. Okay, so let me quickly check if that's actually available, and it is. Okay, so let's go ahead. As you can see here, that would cost me $14, but here they are giving it for me. They're giving it to me for free, which is really cool. Let's go ahead and then claim this domain name. Yeah, I forgot to mention, but they give us a free SSL as well. So let's go ahead and install that. Yep. And that's installing. And that's going to make sure every traffic on the website is secure. All right, so now let's proceed to work on the project. All right, now go on your desktop or wherever you want on your computer to create your project. And I'm going to create mine here and call it responsive portfolio. Simple, right? And I'm going to go ahead and then open this project with VS Code. That is the text editor I'm going to use. And right here, we should create the different files that we need for this project. So the first one is going to be our index HTML file. We need a CSS file as well. I'm going to call that one index.css. You can call it whatever you want with a .css extension. But for the HTML, make sure it is index.html. And lastly, we are going to have our JavaScript file. I'm going to call that index.javascript or JS as well. And of course, we are going to start with the HTML. But before that, I'm going to create a folder and call it assets. And that is going to have all the images that I'm going to use in this tutorial. Okay, so those are the images. I'm going to leave a link for the starter file that is going to have the images as well. So you should check the link in the description for that. And so let's go ahead and then do exclamation tab, which is going to give us this boilerplate. And I'm going to change my title to modern responsive personal portfolio website using HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. That is my title. You can give any title you want to this project since it's going to be yours. And let's go ahead and link our CSS. I like my code commented for you guys, so I'm going to comment this very well. And let's link our CSS file, which is the index.css file. Perfect. All right, so let's go ahead and looking at the finished project. We need a navbar first, and that is what we are going to create, and that should be very simple. Let's have a nav tag, and inside of that we are going to have a div with a class of container and another class of nav underscore container, which is going to wrap around the two elements, that is the logo and the button. Okay, now this class is a general class. I'm going to get to that when I get to the CSS and it's going to be used for different sections of the page as well, right? But this nav underscore underscore container is going to be specific to this div inside of the nav bar. Okay, so let's have a link where it's going to have our logo. If you want no refresh, you can do hash. Otherwise, if you want the page to refresh on click of this link, then let's target the index.html file. Okay, now my logo is going to be just a text, and that will say EGATOR. And also we are going to have our button that is going to have the theme icon. Okay, now let's give this a class of nav theme btn, and inside of that we are going to have an icon. Okay, so let's go to icon scout. That is the icons library that I usually use. Excuse me. And so first let's get the CDN. We just scroll down and then copy this link right here, come back to our project, and I'm going to have a comment here. So let me just duplicate this, shift alt and then the down arrow duplicates that for me, and that's icon scout. Yeah, perfect. All right, and below that I'm going to paste the link, the CDN that I just copied. Beautiful. All right, so let's get that real quick, that icon, and that is the moon icon. Okay, I'm going to use the free, so I'll choose free here and then search for moon, and I have the moon icon that I want. If you copy just this, you're going to get the SVG, which I don't want, so I'll just click it and choose this as a font. Okay, and I'm going to paste this right here. Perfect. All right, so if you have an extension called live server right here, if you have this extension, then you should have this go live right here that you can click, and it is going to open this project in your default browser. Okay, so whenever we do any changes or we make any changes and then we save, it is going to automatically refresh our page for us. Okay, so that we don't come here and then hit the refresh button ourselves. I hope that makes sense. All right, so basically we are done with the nav bar at the top, so we can directly go to our CSS and then add some styling to our project. Usually for every element there are some default styles. As you can see in the button, we have this icon, right? But the button has some border to it. It has a default background. For the link as well, we have an underscore and all that. Okay, some have patterns, margins and all that. Okay, so as you can see, we have some space around these elements. All right, so now to set everything back to normal, like to clear everything off, every default styles off, let me actually put this side by side, guys. I am going to go ahead and then have everything zeroed out. Okay, so let me target every element on the page and give them all a margin of 0, same as the pattern. I'm going to do outline of 0 as well, a border of 0. And once I have the border zeroed out, you can see that our icon doesn't have the border. Okay, let's set the text decoration for any element that has that styling, that's the underline. Let's set it to none, and now our link doesn't have that. And I'm going to set list style, I'm going to set that to be none as well, and that is the bullets that comes with list items. Okay, and lastly I'm going to have a box sizing of border box, and box sizing is a very important style that you should have on all the elements to make sure they don't extend past the space that you want them to be. Okay, you can read more about box sizing to get more clarification, but it's a very important property that you should have on all your elements. All right, now we are going to use CSS variables as well, so I'm going to have some root variables here. Okay, so let's set our root variables. First I'm going to set our colors, and I'm going to have our primary color, so color primary, and it's going to be a hex code of 156 BD4, okay, which is a nice blue color. And I'm going to have a variant for that, which is going to be a little transparent. I'm going to call that color primary variant. And instead of a hex code, there's going to be an RGBA, so red, green, blue, alpha, and 21 for the red, 107 for the green, 212 for the blue, and the alpha is going to be 0.5. So it's going to be 50% transparent, if that makes sense. Right, I'm going to have some more gray colors, but they are going to start from white, and I'm going to call that color gray 0, and that's going to be pure white, FFF. Okay, and below that I'm going to have some more variables, which are mainly going to be colors and some other variables. So let me just go ahead and quickly paste those so that we don't waste time on this. So we have the variables that we had before, and now we have color gray 50, which is light gray, and it comes down to very dark gray. Okay, and also we have container width LG. So for the container, that's the general container class that I had here, I'm going to set it to be a width of 74% on large screens, and then on small screens or on mobile phones is going to be 94%. Okay, all right, now I have a transition variable here as well, which is pretty explanatory. Okay, so for anything that we transition, we are going to have 350 milliseconds of duration for that transition, and the timer function is going to be easy, very simple. All right, now let's move on, and I'm going to have some more general styles before we target the nav itself, okay, to make our lives very easier. All right, so I actually don't like this font, so we should go ahead to Google Fonts to change that real quick. So let's go to Google Fonts, and I'm going to use, and if you watch my tutorials, you probably know what I'm going to use already, Montserrat. That is my favorite font. So you can use Roboto, whatever you want, you can do. Okay, but I want Montserrat as my font here in this project. So we can go ahead and get font and copy this into our HTML file. Okay, so let's come back to our HTML, have a comment. I'm going to duplicate this and then bring it down. That will be Google Fonts, Montserrat. Perfect. And then paste the links that we copied from the Google Fonts page. Right, so we can go ahead and then give our body, let me make this smaller again. We can go ahead and then make this font family to be Montserrat, and it's a sans serif font, so we are going to say sans serif for a backup in case we are not able, or the browser isn't able to fetch the Montserrat fonts that we have. All right, let's go ahead, and I'm going to give a line height of 1.6, a background of the color gray 0, that is the FFF variable that we have right here. And CSS variables are very important, especially if you want to create something that you can easily alter or edit. So for instance, if I use this primary color on different elements on the page, and later on I want to change those colors to a different color, I could just come here and then change this, and all the elements that use this variable or this color is going to be, or are going to be edited or changed, if that makes sense. Those are the very simple things that you can achieve with variables, and it's going to help us very well because we are going to make this project a dark theme as well, right? So let's go ahead, and I'm going to change the font size to be 0.9 rem and give a color. Okay, so the text color is going to be color gray 80, which is a very dark gray right here, 1F 1F 1F. And lastly, I'm going to set user select to be none. Okay, so when we come to our finished project and then we try selecting anything, it's not going to work. Okay, so you click and drag trying to select anything, it's not going to work. Okay, so that is how I want it. If you don't want your website like that, you can remove this property right here. Now let's target the container class. That is the general container class that I talked about right here. Okay, so that class is going to be used on different elements on the page, different sections of the page actually. And let's have a very simple style for this. Let's give it a width of the container width LG and a margin inline. So margin on the x-axis is going to be auto, and that centers it horizontally. Okay, it's going to be centered horizontally or in the middle on the x-axis. Right, let's have some more general styles. Every image on the page is going to have a width of 100% of its parent width. They are going to be displayed block. And lastly, I'm going to say object fit should be cover for every image. Right, now these are not taking effect right now because we do not have all the elements, but as you can see, we have the container class taking effect already, and that pushes the elements right in the middle of the page. If I should give this a background, you should see. All right, so as you can see, that centers this container horizontally. Okay, perfect. I don't need the red right now, so I'll just remove it. Now let's target the different headings that we are going to have. So we are going to have 5 and H6. And for those, let's change the line height to 1.1. And I said let's change because by default I gave the body a line height of 1.6. But for all headings, I want them to have a line height of 1.1. Okay, you can change it to whatever you think looks good for you. And the color is going to be color gray 900, and that is the darkest gray that we have in the variables. The font weight is going to be 900 as well to make it extra bold. Perfect. All right, now let's go ahead and target the different headings individually. The font size for an H1 is going to be 1.8 rem. For an H2, we are going to have a font size of 1.6 rem. I should just duplicate this to make it easier for me. So we have H1, H2, let's have H3, and it's going to be 1.4 rem. H4 is going to be 1.2 rem. H5 is going to be 1 rem. And lastly, H6, that is heading 6, is going to be 0.8 rem. Perfect. All right, now let's proceed and have some styles for our anchor tag. And here I'll just set transition to the variable transition, which is all 350 milliseconds, if you can remember. That is what I have here. Perfect. Let's target, or let's have a class of btn that we are going to use on any element that we want to look, or we want it to look like a button. Okay, so this is going to be a general class for any element that we want it to look like a button. And the background is going to be color gray 0, which is FFF, that's pure white. The border is going to be 2 pixels solid, color gray 100, which is light gray. The color, or the text color, is going to be color gray 900, which is the darkest gray. Font weight 500. A padding of 0.8 rem for the top and bottom, and then 1.7 rem for the left and right. Transition is going to be the variable transition that we have in the variables, and the cursor is going to be pointer so that every button looks clickable when we hover over it. Okay, now let's have a btn primary class as well. So any element that has the btn class and another class of primary should have a background of color gray, color primary. And guys, it's raining here, so I hope it doesn't really distract my sound. and I don't want to stop recording now, so let's proceed. The border color is going to be color primary as well, and the color or the text color is going to be, come on, it's going to be white. Okay, you can set the border color to transparent so that it just doesn't look I don't want the default border color that I have here. That is why I changed it. Okay, so yep, that's what we have. So from the finished project, this is what I'm trying to achieve. Okay, and this is what we are working on now. These styles are going to take effect once we have the elements for them. Okay, I have a few more classes that I have to add here before we proceed, and on hover of any button we want the background to be color primary variant and the border color to be transparent. Right, now let's go ahead, and for every section that we are going to have different section elements on the page. We want a pattern of 10 rem on the top and bottom, and then 0 for the left and right. So referencing the finished project, there's going to be a section, for instance, right? And as you can see, we have some padding at the top and the bottom, and right here we have the same thing, and that is what I have in here. Okay, on this line. Now let's select every section again, and I want some difference between the different elements that we have. Now for this line, if we come back to our finished project and then we look at this, you can see that some sections have different backgrounds. Okay, so we are going to target the odd sections. So odd number starts from 1, right? So the first section that we have is going to be this one. This isn't a section, there's a header, that's the element it is in, that is why it wasn't affected, right? So there's going to be the first section, and that is going to have this background. The third one is going to have such a background as well, and the fifth one. Those are the odd numbers, right? So we are targeting them and then giving them a different background. Okay, so the nth child odd, actually let me do even. Okay, I want to give the even ones that color, and the background is going to be color gray 5, or let's do 50. Perfect. So yeah, that's it. And lastly, I'm going to have some styles for the direct H1 and P, or the paragraph tag, in our section. So every section with a direct H1 and a direct P tag should have a text align of center, a margin top of 0.5 rem, and a width of 30 rem. Lastly, let me have a margin inline of auto so that they are horizontally centered as well. And that's all for our general styles. Okay, so now we can target our navbar, and these are very important. You should know how to take some general styles and then make them stand alone, so that you can just apply them, whether you're going to put them in a class or anything like that, so that you can just apply them on different elements on your page. Otherwise, you're going to have so much with repetition of properties that you don't actually need. Okay, all right, so let's have a comment here, navbar, and go ahead and install our navbar that we have. When it comes to actually styling elements that are already on the page, I like to see everything happen live. Okay, so I'm going to put this side by side so that you see whatever is happening on the screen. And now let's go ahead and then target our nav, and remember it's inside a nav tag, which is an HTML5 semantic tag. Let's have a background to that, and that is going to be the blue color. That's the color primary. Let's give it a width of 100 viewport width to fill the entire width of the screen of the browser and of the window, right? So let's have the height set to 3 rem. Let's display grid. And the reason I'm displaying grid, let me save this so that you see. I'm displaying grid because I want to put the direct child of the nav, which is the container. Okay, so we have a class of container and the nav container right here. I want to put this div exactly in the middle, that's vertically and horizontally. Okay, so I'm going to display grid and then place items to the center. It's almost like doing position maybe fixed and then setting left and then top to 50% and later on transforming to make sure it is in the center. But there's a very simple trick that you can use if you do not know this already. All right, so let's actually position this to be fixed, and it's going to be 0 from the top and from the left as well 0. Okay, now I want to give it a z index as well, a z index of 9, so that it sits on top of everything on the page on the z axis. I don't want to get technical, but I hope you guys know all these terms already. Okay, perfect. Now let's target the nav container, right? That is the direct div, and I'm going to display flex, and this container is what has the logo and then this button. So if I save, nothing happens. Now let's justify content to be space between, just to push everything to the end. Okay, so we have this at the start and then this at the end to give you that space. Perfect. Now I'm going to align items to the center. Perfect. All right, now let's target the link. So nav container and then the link, which is the anchor tag. I'm going to give that a color of white. And you could ask why I'm not giving it that variable white color, and that is because I want it to be white regardless of the theme that we are on. Okay, later on the variable is going to affect the color, so I don't want this one to be affected. That is why I'm giving it this static color. Okay, now let's give this a font width of 700, and lastly I'm going to give it a font size of 1.1 rem. So we save, and this is our link now. Now let's target this button. So nav container, actually I gave that a class, right? So nav theme btn, that's the class I gave this button right here. Let me show you real quick. There's it. Okay, all right, so let's give that a background of transparent. I don't want that white background. The color is going to be white as well, just like the logo, and the font size is going to be 1.3 to increase it. Wait a minute. Okay, so our server stopped. Let me quickly restart that. All right, so now we have that, and lastly I'm going to give it a cursor of pointer to make it look clickable right here. Perfect. All right, so that is it for our navbar. Now we can continue to maybe work on the header, or we'll either work on the header right now or on the floating nav, but I think we should work on the floating nav right now. Okay, so that we move on to the header after that. So let's get back here in our HTML. I'm actually going to have a comment here. And I'll copy that comment to the next element, and that's going to be the floating nav. All right, so here, let me put this inside the menu tag. Okay, let me actually give this a floating nav class, and I'm going to have anchor tag here, which is going to bring us to the top of the page, and inside that I'm going to have an icon. So let's come back here to icon scouts and search home, and this is what I used. I'll just copy that right here and paste it. Okay, Now I can go ahead and then duplicate this 4 more times. That is 4, I think. The second one is going to go to our resume section of the page. We have projects. You have frequently asked questions. We have carousel or the testimonial section, but I'm not going to add that. And lastly, we are going to have our contacts. Okay, if you want, you can add the other one, which is the frequent the testimonials. Okay, so we should have different icons for all of them. So let's search contact to get let's see, phone. Yep, this. Okay, I'll just copy this, come down here and then paste it. Perfect. Frequently asked questions. Let's see, question. Just copy this. Whatever makes sense, whatever icon makes sense to you, right? So just do what you want. And let's see, projects. So portfolio, and some may not be available, but portfolio, yeah, that's okay. And let's say resume, you're probably not going to get any account for that, so maybe paper or list, whatever. Maybe this makes more sense. I just copy and paste it. Come on, I hit copy again. All right, Control V to paste. And that is it for our floating nav HTML. All right, so let's see what we have. And since we position this to be fixed, it is actually below this, okay, below the nav bar. All right, so let's go ahead and then push it down and give it some styling. I'll copy this comment right here and then paste it for our floating nav. And as usual, I'm going to put this side by side. So we have a menu with a class of floating nav. So let's get that, floating underscore nav. And right away, let me position it fixed. I want it to always be on the screen, and it's going to be 50% from the left, and from the bottom, let's do around 2 rem. Okay, and right here you can see we have them. They were hidden below the nav bar, but now we can see them here. Perfect. And of course, this is not exactly in the middle, so we'll have to transform and then translate on the x-axis -50% to put it right in the middle. Okay, perfect. All right, now let's give this a background of color. Actually, I'm going to do an RGB A of 00, so black with an alpha of 10%, so 0.1. I'm going to give it a backdrop filter of blur 10 pixels. Backdrop filter, and for that also blur 10 pixels, just so it works on all browsers, okay, or at least the WebKit browsers, just so it works on them. It's not every browser that every property works on. Let's give this a width of fit content, a height of 4.4 rem, a display of flex, align items of center, justify content of space between, and a gap of 0.4 rem. So we save this, and this is what we have. Now let's move on, and I'm going to give it a padding of 0.7 rem and a border radius of 2.2 rem as well. Let's actually give this a z index so that, as I said, it sits on top of the page. So z index of 9 as well, just like the top nav bar. Okay, So now let's go ahead and then target the links inside of the floating nav, and the color is going to be color gray 900, very dark. The width is going to be 3.2 rem, aspect ratio of 1:1, and that means the height is going to be the same as the width. We're going to display grid just so we can place items to the center. Okay, now let's give it a border radius of 50% to make it a circle, and a font size of 1 rem. So we save this and we have this. Okay, now I'm actually going to have an active class on one of them. Initially, of course, when the page loads, we are going to have the active class on the home link. So for the active class, let's see, the background is going to be the primary color, and the text color itself is going to be white. Okay, so we have this. Not too bad, guys. All right, so this is what we have so far, but I want to have a class here called dark theme variables, and then I'll get the floating now, right? So you are going to understand this when we get to the theme toggle using JavaScript, but for now I want to have a background of RGBA 255, 255, 255, and 0.1. Okay, so white with 10% alpha. I want to have that, and let me actually leave a comment here. Perfect. All right, so that is all for the floating nav, and as you can see, it doesn't really look the same as the finished project. You know what, let me just copy from the finished project. All right, so I'll just paste to get the same icons, just so we have the same icons as we have in the finished project. Okay, nothing crazy here, no cheating here. Okay, I don't cheat in my videos. All right, so now you can see we have the same icons just like we have in the finished project, and that is for the floating nav. Now we are going to have some JavaScript for the floating nav as well, and that is going to be for when we click on any icon. Okay, we want to change the active class to be on that icon. All right, maybe later on in the source code I may add some more functionality for when you scroll, the active class also changes to the section that corresponds to the link, but for now we will have the click to have the active class on it, right? It's not going to be for now, it's not going to be done now because we don't have any other sections on the page, so it wouldn't really make sense, right? But getting to the end of the video, we are going to add that JavaScript to make that work. All right, so let's get back here in our HTML and work on our header section. All right, so let's get down here and work on the header, which is right here. Okay, so let's do that real quick. I'm going to close this. And you know what, even before I proceed with the header, I want to have some animation for when we load the page. Okay, so when the page loads, I want this to animate in, right? And I don't want to use any external library for this, so let's get back into the CSS here, and I'm going to have a keyframe, and I'm going to call this animate floating nav, and it's just going to go to, so it is going to be the end of the keyframe of the animation that I'm going to stay here, right? So it's going to go to a bottom of 1.5 rem, an opacity of 1 or 100%, and the transform. Now for the transform, I'm going to have translate x of -50% and a scale of 1, right? But initially I want to have the bottom set to -8 rem so that it is off the screen. So when we come, we are not going to see it, if that makes sense. Let me put this side by side again. And it's going to have an initial opacity of 0 here as well. And lastly, the transform right here is going to have a scale of 0 as well. Okay, so to add this, or to link this keyframe that we have to this element, we have to say animation, or we have to set the animation property. So animation, the keyframe is called animate floating nav. That's the keyframe, and it's going to take 1 second to animate. That's the animation duration. We have is for the timing function, and the fill mode is going to be forwards. Okay, so that this animation looks, or it keeps the end state that we have in the keyframe. So now when we refresh the page, we have this animate in. Okay, and I hope that makes sense. All right, so we have the animation down. So now we can move on to the next section of the portfolio website, and that is going to be the header section. Let me try and yeah, you know what, I'm actually going to put a delay on it. Okay, so we have the duration, and I'm going to set a delay of 2 seconds on it. So when we refresh, we wait for like 2 seconds before it pops up. Okay, and that's going to look good because of the animations that we have here. So right after the elements animating, then we have this one animating as well, right? But for those ones, we're actually going to use a library called animate on scroll. But for this one, we just have to do it ourselves. Okay, if you know animation, that's very, very simple. All right, so let's get back here. This is going to be inside the header tag. I'm not going to give it any class, and the direct div inside of it is going to have a header container class. Now inside of this, we are going to have a header image. Okay, so your portrait, your picture, and it's going to have the image. Let's get into our assets and get the portrait. For the alt, I'm just going to say header image. Okay, and below the header image div, we are going to have an h5, and let's just say hi, Ernest. Below the h5, we are going to have an h1, and I'll just say full stack and a span, and say web developer, and I'm going to have a break and say based in Ghana. It doesn't really matter the uppercase and lowercase mixes that I have, but I'm going to actually make them uppercase. Okay, the whole h1 is going to be uppercase regardless. All right, so below the h1, I'm going to have a paragraph, and I'll just do lorem 15. If you have emit, you can just do lorem and the number of words that you want for the text. Okay, and below this, we are going to have a div with a class of header CTA, or header call to action, and these are going to have 2 links. The first one will be going to the project section of the page, and let's just give it our btn class. If you can remember the general classes that we had a btn class. Okay, so background, border, and all that, right? Once we just add that class, it's going to style this element, right? This is going to say my project. I'll duplicate this, and this is going to be our hire me or contact me button, and I'm going to add another class of primary to the already existing btn class. All right, so let's go ahead, and this is going to go to the contact section. Yeah, now below the header CT, I'm going to have a menu tag here. Let me give this a class of header socials, and they are going to have the social media links. The first one is going to be whatever you want, actually. Come on, GitHub. So you just copy the font and then paste it. Okay, so this is going to go to https github.com/EGATOR, for instance, but that should be your link. And let me duplicate this 3 times. The next one may go to Facebook or whatever you want. I don't know how you would use Facebook for this, but who knows, maybe you have some good content on Facebook. So this would go to facebook.com/whatever your handle is, and we will have dribble maybe. Okay, so this would go to dribble, so use the dribble icon here. And lastly, well, what do we have? Instagram, I think. Let's look at the finished project. Okay, we have LinkedIn. Okay, LinkedIn, perfect. And as you can see, it's not exactly in line with what I have here, but you know, I'm just trying to teach you exactly how to create this kind of web or this website. Okay, so you can go ahead and modify it however you want. So you have linkedin.com/your handle, right? So I paste the icon, we save, and this is all the HTML we need for our header section. Okay, all right, now let's come to the CSS and make sure we have this styled. I'll copy this comment, come down, paste it. Let me have some more space at the top, and this is going to be our header. All right, so this is what we have for our header. Let's go ahead and style it real quick. All right, so we check, and this is what we have from our header HTML. And as you can see, our buttons are already styled. Okay, we have the default BTN and the BTN with the primary class. They are already styled. Perfect. All right, so let's have some more styles. First, let's target our header tag, and I'm going to push it down a little bit, okay, because of the fixed position that we gave to our navbar. It is hidden below it. Okay, so like we have parts of the header below this, right? I hope that makes sense. So we are going to push it down by the height of this navbar. So that will be margin top of 3 rem, and that's the height of the navbar, if you can remember. Let me show you that real quick. We gave it a height of 3 rem, right? So we push our header down a little bit. We give it a height of, I'm going to calculate this, and that will be 100 viewport height. So that's the height of the window, and we subtract the 3 rems from it. We pushed it down by 3 rems, so we are going to subtract that, and that will give us exactly the height of the window. Okay, we have a big image right now, that's why there's no, or it doesn't seem like it's taking any effect. Let's give this a display of grid, and then place items to the center. All right, so we have this so far. Let's target our header container. Come on, header container. Let's give this a width of 36 rem and text align everything to the center. Okay, so we have this. Let me actually make this a little bit smaller. Put this here. Perfect. Now I'm going to have some style for dark theme. Okay, a very simple one line code here, and that's dark theme variables. That's the variable we will use for the dark theme, okay, to change or to toggle the dark theme, right? So for the dark theme, I want the header to have a background of linear gradient, and it's going to go from the color gray 100 to the color gray 0. Okay, so that's going to be for the dark theme. I want to have that before we proceed. Let me actually have a comment here. Make background a gradient on dark theme. Perfect. All right, so now let's proceed. And for the container, I think, yeah, that's enough. Let's target the header image. And that's the image, the div that wraps around this image that we have here. I'm going to give this a width of 12 rem and a height of 14 rem. The border radius is going to be 6 rem for the top left, 6 rem for the top right, 2 rem for the bottom right, and then 2 rem for the bottom left. So we save this, and it is not showing because we have to set an overflow of heading. Perfect. So we have that. Now let's actually position it right in the middle of the page here. And so let's give it a margin inline, margin inline of auto, and let me give it a margin bottom as well of 2 rem. Okay, so that it pushes it from this text. Perfect. Now let's continue, and I'm going to target the image itself. So header image and the img tag. I'll just set the height to 100%. Okay, so that in case you are going to use your own image and it doesn't fit, it will make sure it fits. Okay, you may have some space here if your height or the height of your image is enough to fit this. Okay, all right, now let's proceed, and I'm going to target the h1 to header container, and then the h1, let's give that a margin of 0.8 for the top, 0 for the left and right, and then 0.1 for the bottom. I'm going to target the span inside of the h1 and give that a color of color primary, and that wraps around the web developer. Okay, I hope you remember that. Now let's target the call to action buttons. Okay, so header container, or we give it a class of header CTA, right? Let's give that a margin top of 1.7 rem, or 1.8 rem is in bad though. I'll display flex and have a gap of 1 rem. Okay, that is not centered, so let's give this a margin inline of auto. It's still not centered because we have to give it a width. Okay, so if I should give this a background of red, you can see it is too big, so I'll give it a width of fit content. Perfect. So now we have it centered. Nice. All right, so now let's style the header socials or the social media links. It should be positioned here just like we have the finished project. So I gave that a class of header socials. It was inside the menu. So for that, let's position absolute, and from the right is going to be 100%. Sorry, from the right is going to be 10%. From the bottom is going to be 4 rem. Okay, so that should be positioned right here. Perfect. Now I'm going to display flex, and the flex direction is going to be column, of course, and I'll have a gap of 1 rem between them. Now let's target the header socials anchor tags and give them a background of color gray 100. Color, or the text color, is going to be color primary. The width is going to be 2.2 rem. Aspect ratio of 1:1 to make the height the same as the width. We are going to display it to be flex and align items to the center. Justify content to the center as well. And I'll give it a border radius of 0.6 rem. And transition of the variable transition that we have up top. All right, so that is it for this side as well. Let's have a hover effect for when it is hovered. So when we hover, we want the background to be the variant, color primary variant, and the text color is going to be color gray 0, so white. Okay, so let's save this, and when we hover, this is what we get. Perfect. All right, so that is for the header section. This looks amazing. That is for the header section. So now let's move on to the next section, which is going to be this right here. And when I switch, you can see there's a little bit of difference. Okay, there's a little difference between the finished project right here and then what we are working on now, and that is because of this scroll bar. Okay, and we are going to customize it, getting to the end of the video basically. All right, so we can proceed to the next section. Then that is going to be this right here. Okay, the about section. All right, so let's get back into our HTML. I'll copy this link, or the resume section, and right, so this is what we are going to work on, the resume section. All right, so here we are going to have a section with an ID of resume. Okay, now if we come back up to our floating now, right here in our href, we had hashtag resume. Okay, so on click of this link, it should bring us to this section. So you should make sure you have an ID on this section, and it should correspond to the class, or sorry, the href that you have. Okay, right here. All right, so let's go ahead, and we are going to have a container class, of course, and resume container class as well. Now let's have two divs. The first one is going to be resume underscore left, sorry, and I'll duplicate that to make this resume right. Okay, so for the left side, we are going to have an h1, and I will just say below that we are going to have a paragraph, and I'll just do lorem 8 to have some random text here. Below the paragraph, we are going to have a menu, and these are going to be buttons. Okay, now of course we should give them a class of btn, and the first one is going to say experience. Duplicate that a few times. You have experience, education, skills, and then about me. Now I'm going to have different classes that are going to be specific to these different buttons. So the first one is going to be about btn. The second one is going to be skills btn. We are going to need that in the JavaScript. Okay, so on click, then we show different content. You are going to understand that when we get to the JavaScript. And we have education btn as well, and lastly experience. Come on, experience btn. Perfect. All right, now I'm actually going to give the experience another class of primary. That's the primary class on the button. All right, so for the right side, we are going to have an h4, and by default is going to be experience, so we should have that. Let's have a paragraph tag and do maybe lorem 18 to have some random text on here, or lorem 15 maybe. Perfect. Below the paragraph, you are going to have an added list, and for each li we are going to have age 6, so heading 6, and that will just say some dates, so from 2018 to 2019 I was an intern, and then you have a paragraph that says the name of the company, right? I'll duplicate this li 3 more times and have some content here. So we have 2019 to 2021, and around that time I was a freelance web designer on whole platform, Fiverr and Upwork. 2021 to 2022, front-end developer. And these are not accurate, by the way. I'm just filling in the space. MTN Ghana. And lastly, we have 2022 to 2024. Around that time I was a full stack or full stack freelancer, yeah, self-employed. All right, so that's it for our experience. That's what we have so far from the HTML. Let's go ahead and then make this look good. Okay, let's go ahead and then style this real quick. So I'll just make this a little bigger, and maybe, yeah, it should look like that. All right, so I should of course have a comment. Let me just copy this, come way down to the bottom here, and then paste. And this is going to be our resume styles. All right, so I'm going to right away target the resume container, and I'm going to give that a display of grid, and I'm going to set the grid template columns to be 14 rem on the left and auto for the right side. Okay, and I'm going to have a gap of 7 rem between them, and give the container a width of 60%. All right, so we save, and this is what we have. Okay, so this is the left and the right. Okay, perfect. Now let's target the left side. Let me actually bring this to the right side so that we see what's happening on the left. Resume left. Let me target the paragraph directly, this paragraph right here, and I'm going to give that a margin of 0.5 for the top, 0 for the left and right, and then 1 rem for the bottom. Let's target the resume left menu, and this menu is what wraps around all these buttons. So let's give them a display of flex, a flex direction of column, and the gap of 1 rem. Right, now let's target the buttons themselves. So resume left menu button, color of maybe, or actually let me make it white, so FFF. Perfect. All right, now let's target the right side. Let's target the right side. So resume right, and let me grab the H4 that we have. Okay, this H4, given a margin bottom of 0.5 rem, a color of color primary, So we save, that's what we have. Let's target the paragraph or the direct paragraph inside of it. This right here. I'm going to give that a margin bottom of 1.5 frame. I'll target the unadded list and display that to be grid. The grid template columns is going to be 1FR, 1FR. So 50-50 and a gap of 1 rem. Now resume right UL and I'll give that a background. So each of these elements, right? That's what I'm targeting now. I'll give that a background of the white background that I have in the variables, a pattern of 1.5 frame, a border of 0.4 for the width solid, and it's going to be color gray 0, which is the white again. Give it a transition because we are going to have a hover effect and the cursor is going to be default. All right, so that's what we have. Perfect. And we do not have the hover effects right now, so we should get that real quick. So on hover, I want the background to be transparent. Simple as that. Beautiful. All right, now let's target the elements inside of the card or the li. And first, let's target the h6, which is this, the date. So resume right li and then h6. I want the color to be color gray 500. Resume right li h5, and that is going to be color primary. We have that as well. And lastly, I'm going to actually, let me give this a margin 0.8 rem for the top and bottom, and then 0 on the left and right. Okay, so we have enough space there, and I think this is enough. Okay, so we have our resume experience styled. All right, now we click and nothing happens because we haven't added the JavaScript, but we are going to do so soon. Okay, right after we are done with every element on the page, we'll add the JavaScript to make sure everything is fully functional. I'm going to have a few lines of code for the JavaScript that we'll be having in the future. So let me have those before we proceed. I don't want to leave them, but we will come back, or I'll come back to explain them when we get to the JavaScript. Okay, so I'm going to have a resume, right, and then another class of education. Okay, so I'll target the another list here, and the grid template columns is going to be 1FR. Simple. Okay, and also I'll target the LIs, and actually let me target the H5s, and the margin top is going to be 0. All right, so that's for the education. I'm going to have one for skills, and the resume right skills and other list is going to have a grid template columns of repeat 5 times 1FR. Right, these are not going to take effect right now, but once we add the JavaScript, they are going to work. And the gap is going to be 2 rem. Now let me target the list items, and the pattern is only going to be 1 rem. Okay, all right, let's move on, and the last one is going to be the about. So resume right, and with a class of about, should have the, let me actually target the and add the list, and they are going to have a gap of 0. Okay, and for the list items, let's give them a background of transparent, display, come on, we will display flex, align items to the center, give it a padding of 0, a gap of 0.3 rem, and a border of 0. Right, and I have some 2 more styles before we proceed. The H6 is going to have a color of color gray 500, and the H5 is going to have a color or a text color of 900, color gray 900. All right, so those are the styles that we will need for when we get to the JavaScript. Okay, and as I said, I will explain this in detail when we get there. But for now, we are done with the resume section of the page, and now we can move on to the next section, which is going to be the project section. Okay, all right, so let's get back to our HTML. I'm just going to copy this comment, scroll all the way down, have some space, and then paste this, and that's going to be the project section. You know what, guys, I don't want to finish everything before I touch the JavaScript. Okay, I want to make everything functional as we progress. All right, so let me go ahead and add the JavaScript for the resume section. Okay, and maybe even add that of the floating nav. You know, on click of right here, when we click any of these to go to that section, we want to make sure we give the active class to what we clicked on. Okay, so yeah, let's work on that, and then make sure on click of any of these buttons we change the contents of the right side to match what we clicked on here. All right, so let's go to, first of all, let's make sure we link our JavaScript file, and that is index.js. All right, now if we come here, then let's say alert, we save. That should make sure okay, perfect. All right, so our JavaScript file is linked. All right, so let's work on the floating now first. Let's come up here and then see. So we have a menu with a class of floating nav, and inside it we have our links. Okay, so let's come here and then select all the links, right? So let's say floating navs plural is going to be equal to document.query selector all, and inside the floating, let's see, right, floating nav, so floating underscore nav, floating underscore nav, we get the links or the anchor tags, right? And once we have that, we can go ahead and then loop through them using the for each method here. And for each link, we are going to go ahead and then add an event listener. Okay, and that is going to be a click event. So on click of any of the links, we want to add a class list of active. Okay, so if we save this and come back to our project, and first of all, let me refresh this. So if I click to go to the resume section, I get the active link on this. Okay, but now the previous one or the previous button still has the active class, which we don't want. Okay, so let's go ahead and then do that real quick. Let's have a function that clears the active class on any link or any element that has it. All right, so let's have a function here called remove active class, and that's going to be equal to this arrow function here, and we are going to say floating navs dot for each. We are going to remove the active class. Okay, so we are just targeting all of them and then removing the active class. So right before we add the active class here, we should go ahead and remove the active class. Okay, so we should go ahead and run this function. All right, I hope that makes sense. Okay, so if I come back, and first let's go back home, but if I click on this to get to the resume section, you can see that is the only link that has the active class. Okay, now you can see it just jumps to that section, which I don't want. Okay, so let's come back to our CSS and add a smooth scroll effect on our HTML tag. So let's say scroll behavior. Let's set that to be smooth. All right, so now if we come back, and my internet is messing up, guys. All right, so now if I click, we get that smooth scroll effect. Perfect. All right, so now, as I said, let's go ahead and then finish up with the full functioning of this section, the resume section. Okay, on click of this button, for instance, we should fetch the content that matches with the education, same as the skills and then the about. Okay, they should have different contents on click of them. So for instance, in the finished project, this is how it should be, right? So we should have a content that matches this, same as the scales and the about me as well. All right, so let's go ahead and then work on that. All right, so actually let me have a comment up top. This was for the floating nav. I'm going to copy that comment down here, and this is going to be for our resume, right? All right, so initially, even this content right here is not going to be here, because we are going to use JavaScript to generate that. Okay, so this an added list. Okay, so the H for the paragraph and the unadded list, I'm going to cut that. And so we are only going to have this div ready class of resume right. Okay, that's the only thing we are going to have, right? And we are going to append what we just cut into this, the inner HTML. Okay, so remember we have classes for these already. We have classes for education, skills, and about. Okay, but the default is with the experience. Okay, the experience class that we just cut. All right, so I'm going to come here, and first I'm going to get that resume right. This div, I'm going to get that. Okay, so resume right should be equal to document the query selector and resume right. Right, also I'm going to have what I just cut, that's the content, and that's the experience content. Okay, we will have the skills content as well, education content, and about me content, right? But for now we are going to paste, and I'm going to use the backticks and paste what I cut from the HTML. All right, so this is the content for the experience, right? Now we are going to go ahead and then get the button as well, the button that we should click on, this right here, this button right here. That's the default, but we are going to get it in case we click on any other links before we come back to click on it. Then we should be able to fetch the content that relates to it. Okay, so let's get that button, this button right here. Let's get that, and I'm going to call that experience btn, and that's going to be document.query selector, and we gave that a class of experience btn. If you can remember, let's see, each of these buttons have a class. Okay, so we have experience btn here, right? Perfect. All right, so what do we have to do? First of all, initially, as I said, the right side, the content right, sorry, the resume right, okay, should have the content that relates to the experience, because this is going to be selected by default, right? So when the page loads, I want that to work. Okay, I want the content or the resume right to have the experience content. All right, so I will say resume right, the inner HTML should be equal to experience content. Okay, so let me have a comment here. Set experience content to, or as the default content for resume right when page loads. And I hope that makes sense. So if we come back, we should have our content, and that's the experience, right? But on click on the button tool, we should be able to load it. Okay, because we are going to have clicks for all these. So maybe if we click this and then the content is about me, when we click this again, we should load this content, right? So let's add an event list now on the button. All right, so let me actually do that up here. I will say experience btn dot add event listener is going to be a click event, of course, and we are going to run this anonymous arrow function, and here we are just going to say this. So I'll just cut this and then paste it right here. Resume right inner content, or inner HTML, sorry, is going to be the experience content. Okay, now once we have that, we should make sure we add the primary class, because we are going to at some points we are going to remove it from this. Okay, so we should make sure we add that. So experience btn dot class list dot add primary. All right, so that's it. On click of the experience button, it should actually work, but we already have the content here, so it wouldn't seem like it worked. Okay, but of course we should make sure we remove the classes from other buttons as well. Okay, so this really doesn't make sense right now because these buttons don't work, but when we click on the about me, for instance, this primary class is going to be on it. Okay, we are going to put it on it, right? And when we click back on this, then we should add the primary class right here, as you can see. So we should make sure we remove all the primary classes from the other buttons, okay, so that it is only on this one that we just clicked, right? So the about btn, which we don't have right now, we are going to remove the primary class. Okay, we are going to get the about btn soon, and I'm going to duplicate this. We will have the skills btn and the education btn. We remove all the primary classes from those. All right, or we just make sure they don't have the primary class, if that makes sense. Okay, so that's for the experience. Now I'm going to go ahead and do almost the same thing for the other buttons as well. So let's go ahead. I'm going to have a comment here, and the next is education, I think. Yep, education. So for the education, as usual, education btn should be equal to document dot query selector, and we give that a class of education btn. So let's go ahead and have the content. So education content is going to be equal to backticks, and then I'll paste that. So this is going to be the content for the education. I will leave this in the description, or it's going to be part of the starter file that you get from my GitHub. So you can check the link in the description to get it. But of course, you can go ahead and then type this out. All right, so we have the content for the education. And so we can go ahead and then add event listener on the button. So education btn.add event listener is going to be a click event as well. And let's go ahead and set the resume right inner HTML to be the education content. Right? I hope that makes sense. All right, once we have that, let's make sure the resume right has a class of education as well. Okay, so that the styles that we have for the education right here, we have resume right and then education. Okay, so that these styles are active or activated. All right, so we save this, come back to our projects, and we click this, and that's what we have. Perfect. Now the primary class should be on the education, of course. So let's come back here, and the resume, the education btn class list, we are going to add the primary class. And since we're adding that, we should go ahead and then remove it from the other buttons. So it is going to be the experience btn. All right, so let's save this and see what we have. Perfect. All right, so I click on the education. It has the active or the primary class, but this one still has the primary on that one, which shouldn't be. So I'm going to duplicate this, and the resume right class list, I'm going to set the class name to be equal to, instead of class list, I'm going to set the class name to be resume underscore right. Okay, so when we click on the experience button, the resume right should only have this class and no other class. Okay, I hope that makes sense, right? So that we don't have these classes still being on the resume right. You know, when we click on the education button, we add the education class on the resume right. Okay, so when we click back on the experience, we shouldn't have that class still on the resume right. We should remove it. Okay, so instead of setting class list, I'm setting the right here. Instead of setting the class list, I'm setting the class name to be equal to resume rights. Okay, so that we don't have any other class on the resume rights. I hope that makes sense, guys. All right, so we come back and we click on this. We have the education contents right here in the resume right. We click back on the experience, and then we have this class, and then we have the content that relates to it. Okay, now I don't know why this is behaving this way. This should be removed, or the primary class shouldn't be on this one. So let's quickly make sure that is taken care of. And okay, you know what, let's proceed with the other ones, and then once we have those ones done, we know what to do. Okay, so let's go on and work on the let's work on the scales, and this is going to be very similar, of course. So first, let's have the scales content, and that's going to be backtick, and then we paste the content right here. Let's have the scales button, document, the query selector, scales button, and let's add an event listener. It's going to be a click event, and on click, the resume right inner HTML, of course, is going to be the scales content. the resume right class name is going to be resume, come on, right, and the scales class, the scales button is going to have the primary class, and then we are going to remove the other, then we are going to remove the classes or the primary class from the other buttons. Of course, I should make sure I copy this comment. All right, so we are going to remove it from the experience here, and let's see what happens. Okay, so now let's come back to our project. I click on education. All right, let's proceed and let's have the last one, and that's going to be about me. All right, once we have the last one, then we will know what to do to make sure this actually doesn't have any bugs. So let's have the about me content, which is going to be inside the backtick as well. Let's have the about btn. I'll just make it about, okay, not about me content. So about content, about btn should be equal to document dot query selector, get the about btn, and I'm going to add an event listener to that. The resume right inner HTML is going to be the about content. The resume right class name should be equal to resume right and then about. Now about btn the class list, I'm going to add the primary class. I'll go ahead and remove the primary class from the other buttons. So this is going to be the scales btn. All right, so let's save this and try this out. I click here and now it works. Okay, all right, so everything is working exactly as expected. Now initially it wasn't working well because, or yeah, the primary class wasn't working well with the buttons, or it wasn't being removed from the other classes because not all the elements or the buttons were selected, but they were being used. Okay, so basically there was a bug in it. You receive warnings in the console if you do that, right? You are using an element which isn't already selected, so the elements were already undefined. Okay, they were undefined, but we were using them. The about button, for instance, was being used already right here. Okay, we started using the about btn, but we just selected it basically. Okay, so that was why it wasn't working. Okay, but now everything is good. I hope you understand or you understood everything that we just did, and we should move on to the next section of our portfolio website, and that is going to be the projects section. All right, so let's have a section here with a class of projects and an ID of projects as well, an H1 recent projects. You have a paragraph below that. Let's just do lorem 13 maybe. Yeah, that's not bad. All right, below the paragraph you are going to have a menu with a class of projects categories, and these are going to be buttons. Let's actually give it that btn class. The first one is going to say all. I'll duplicate that a few times and actually give it this. I'll give this the active class. The second one is going to say front end, the third back end, and then full stack. Okay, very simple. Below the menu, we are going to have a container class and another class of project container. And let's have an article tag with a class of project. And first of all, we are going to have a div with a class of project image. We're going to have the thumbnail of the project. And so let's have our image tag. Let's go into our assets and select our first project. We will just say project 1 for the alt. Below the project image, we are going to have an h5, which will have the title of the project. I'll just say project 1 title, and it's going to be a full stack. Okay, and I'm putting into brackets full stack for a reason. You are going to understand that. And below the h5, you're going to have a paragraph that is going to have some little description of the project. And I'll just do lorem. No, that's too much. Maybe lorem 15. Yeah, that's not bad. And below the paragraph, you are going to have project CTA, so project calls to action, and these are going to be links. The first one is going to link to the website of the project. Okay, and of course, let's give it that class btn, and then I'll give it that primary class as well. I'm also going to set the target to be underscore blank so that it opens on click of the link. The website opens in a new tab. And for the content of the link is going to be an icon. So let's just search link. Yep, I'll just copy this and then paste it in. I'm going to duplicate this, and this is going to go to github.com. So basically the repository of the project. Okay, and of course we should search GitHub and then use that as the icon. So I'm going to remove this and then paste the GitHub. Right, so of course there's not going to have the btn class. All right, so let's save this and duplicate this a few times. That's the article. I'm going to duplicate that a few times. 1 2 3 4 5. So we should have 6 in all. And I'm going to go ahead and just edit the content here real quick. This is going to be project 2, and this is going to be front end. We have, okay, so let me change the alt as well. Right here, this is going to be 3. We have the third image 3. That's it. Let's move on to the next one. 4. Oh, I think this is going to be full stack. That's the third one right here. Yeah, it's full stack. So let's proceed. The fourth one is going to be front end, and this is the fourth one. The fifth one, where is it? This is going to be front end as well. Okay, I think that's it. And the last one is going to be back end. 6 6. Okay, let me just make sure I didn't have any mistakes here. All right, and that is it. Okay, so now if we save this and then come back to our project, this is what we have. Okay, nothing too fancy. And these are all projects that I've created. Okay, I've made tutorials about all of these, so you can check them out on my channel if you want to learn more about them. All right, so let's go ahead and then add the CSS for this real quick. Let's go all the way down. Of course, I should have my comment. Where is it?